So my name is John Sheppard, and we're at our farm, the Sheppard Ranch. This is my daughter Sierra, my son Jack, and I've got another daughter who's not here right now. But we farm Idaho Pasture Pigs, which is what you're looking at here. We actually started with Berkshires, and we still have one left. You'll see her over there. She's just kind of our token Berk at this point. We've kind of found that, with maybe the exception of growth rate, that the IPP beats it in all categories. So other than growth rate and litter size, the litter size is a little smaller, they grow a little slower than the Berks, but for what we want, which is that fatty old world marbled pork, these guys have been the best we've found so far. I like to call it old world pork, but that's kind of ironic because it's actually a relatively new breed. It was developed in the southern part of the state in Rigby, Idaho. And the Ferrises were a family that developed the breed over about 7 or 8 years. The genesis of it was they had Kunekunes, and they love the Kunekune. It's a great all-around pig, and it's super friendly, really easy on pasture, and amazing meat quality, although hardly anybody knows because they grow so slow. It's hard to get anything that you can eat. And so the idea was, how do we get something that is as much like that, but grows, well, it'll never grow like a conventional pig, or even most heritage pigs will. How do we get something that grows sort of close to that? You know, get something that's somewhat feasible for a market type, small scale market operation. And that's kind of what we do. We fluctuate anywhere between 50 to 100 pigs, depending on where we are in the farrowing cycle. I believe I spent more time with the breed developers than anyone I'm aware of, as far as anybody who's farming the IPPs. When they got to a point where they were getting out, they kind of contacted me and asked if I would take over their breeding operation. We ended up with the last of their breed stock, which there's a couple of them here. But what that did was, I think, gave us a really good jump start on. There's nothing special I do. I happen to have pretty good stock because of where I was when their situation changed. But the breed is really, getting back to that old world style where it's raised in a pasture or woodlot environment and can thrive in that environment. So the Kunekune is really the majority of the breed. They brought in old Berkshire lines to try to, again, get a little more growth rate while still maintaining really high meat quality. The Berkshire is, renowned for meat quality. And then there's a tiny bit of Duroc in there. And you'll see that kind of come out every now and then when you get these really vibrant red, copper looking pigs. The Duroc was, again, more than the Berk growth rate. The Duroc is a pretty, for a heritage breed, it's a good growing pig. And it's fairly fast growing. What I would call, for a breeder, this would be like a B head, whereas this one over here, I think it's the one, because she's got a really good head. It's short and it's upturned. This one's a really, really good head here, short and upturned. And the reason for that is that mitigates rooting. So that upturned short snout is designed more for grazing than for rooting. And they'll, sure, sweetie. And that's kind of what we need that, because I'm all south-facing, sloping pastures, and if I had conventional pigs, rototilling it all the time, I'd just have a moonscape, So if you look there, you'll see, that pasture behind you and the next one over is exactly what they're in. We rotate the pigs through there all the time, and that's where they live. And right here, we've got 8 to 10 large pigs in this little paddock here, and you can see it's not all torn apart. To me, the idea of pastured pork is a little bit of a misnomer. Pigs will, in my experience anyway, will choose the woodlots over the pasture almost any time. They can get shade, they can get all that, especially if it's kind of I'll move over here so you can see this behind me, where it's interspersed with trees. They can get shade when they want, they can get sun when they want. And this is what the breed was designed from the start to, thrive in, is this sort of environment. They, when we have to trailer them, they don't really enjoy confinement in any stretch, so we have to trailer them to a butcher. It can be unpleasant for the first little bit until they settle down. But for the way we farm, where, our pigs don't really see an enclosure smaller than an acre in their whole lives, this is that's for us been the perfect pig, and it's probably not for everybody, but for our situation and how we farm, it's been, as good as it gets. Temperament, and if you look behind me, I've got a 4-year-old running through a paddock with, fully grown pigs that are, my boar is probably upwards of 600 pounds now. Temperament for us is a deal breaker. a misbehaving pig is going to go, no matter how good he or she is. They have really good temperament. I would also say, you know, like the Berkshires we started with, again, really good temperament. These guys are a little smaller, a little easier to manage, but not by the degree that a lot of people think. You know, they think of the IPP as like a 250-pound pig. My line is certainly not. They're not 250-pound pigs. But temperament is, you know, been kind of like a dog. You know, like every now and then you'll get one that's not well behaved, but by and large, they're really well behaved animals. Growth rate, you're gonna give up some in growth rate. I would say on average ours are probably about 7 to 8 months to finish, and we try to finish at a hanging weight of 200 and a little bit above, you know, where it'll hang at 200 pounds to a little bit above. Now, having said that, one thing about the IPP is there's a bigger spectrum. You know, whereas the Berks are pretty reliable. My Berks were hitting it in about 7 months, and no matter which sow, they were all still pretty close to that. The IPP, I have a sow that's 9 months plus and another one that can hit it in just over 6, you know, and there's a spread there, and they're less predictable in that sense. And for our purposes, it doesn't matter because we don't even farrow at set days. Like we've had sows have piglets in this pasture here, paddock here, in the middle of winter in 2 feet of snow. You know, they breed when they breed and they farrow when they farrow, and that kind of is good for us in that we almost always have pigs in all different size and age ranges for, you know, our customers or breed stock. You know, usually we don't have people waiting that long for breed stock or for meat. I would never knock a Berk. You know, Berks are awesome for meat quality. In my opinion, the IPP even beats it in that. It may not be for everyone. It's a fattier, more marbled pork, but for what we're doing, you know, it even beat the Berkshire. And so when it came to that, you know, they're smaller, so I'm feeding a smaller pig to get, you know, the same litters out of it, although the litter sizes do fluctuate too more than the Berks seem to. I have a sow that reliably gives me 12, and then others that are as low as 6, 7. For us, the biggest difference was the rooting, and then from there, we're willing to just give up a little on the production end for easier to manage, higher meat quality, just a better fit from start to finish with our farm. Older homesteading couples, they'll get pigs out of, let's say, Bay, you know, one of my smaller sows. They'll get piglets out of her because her piglets are going to, you know, be a little smaller. They're going to grow a little slower, and she has good sized litters, but they're just easier to manage. Whereas, let's say you know, if you were thinking, okay, I'm going to try IPPs, well, you can manage a larger animal than, say, a couple in their 70s can. You might want, you know, pigs out of sausage or whatever, you know, and so it's important to, because there's a bigger spectrum, they're less uniform, it's important to tailor, I think, to the customer what they're getting. Yeah, if that makes sense. Another advantage that probably won't be there all that long is just the unique factor to it. And there is something to that, where if a small farm is selling breed stock, well, it's a lot nicer to sell a $500 piglet than competing with, you know, 100 farms in the area that are all selling their piglets for $75. You know, like, that's not a reason to do it, you know, per se, because that won't be there forever. They're just unique enough, and if you build a brand, like your farm brand behind it, then people know that you've got good quality, there's a market for it, you know, and that really, those sort of things, you know, you sell a few of those, that pays for you know, basically handling the breed stock through the year, you know. You can see she's almost the size of that one there. That one might be a little smaller, but she's got a really good head. 2 ottles, really good head, nice short snout. Whereas this one here, her snout's a little longer. She's actually not what I would call a breeder quality IPP, our standards. But it just so happened she accidentally got pregnant. And when she did, her first litter was the best litter we had all year. And so for whatever reason, she shows much more of the boar than of her all of her litters. So here's kind of an example of a big IPP sow. Tends to have smaller litters, but her babies are really good, healthy, you know, good sized babies, versus a trade-off on a smaller sow there, who her babies are sometimes, you know, 2/3 to half the size of that one, but she has 12. You know, she'll kick out for an IPP a really large litter. They look kind of crummy right now because they've been rubbing their hair off. They seem to do that every spring.